Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Mark Dolfini, and you are here with Strategic Boardroom, and you're here to learn about writing and publishing your business book. You're a business owner, you want to write a book, you're in the right spot. If you're not a business owner and you want to write a business book, you're in the right spot. Even if you're not a business owner and don't even want to write a business book, you're in the right spot because we're going to be talking about all sorts of things related to writing and publishing a book. So, for those of you who have never written and published a book before, and you're looking to do this, specifically self-publishing, this is the avenue that I know well. I have written and published a bunch of books. I've got a whole pile behind me. This is 8 books that I have written and published, all of them self-published, and also working on my the next 2. Actually, I've got 2 in the hopper right now. One's called Leader Boss, and the other one I'm still working on the title on it, but I don't know. I'll keep that under my hat for just now. But anyway, it's good to see you. Please let me know where you are from, and if you are in business, what line of work that you're in, because I do want to make this relevant to you. But the reason why I'm put this specific session together is because there's so much bad advice going on out there in relation to people who are wanting to use AI to publish a book or anything along those lines. And I'm here to tell you, like, I really like writing as a craft. Can you use AI for that sort of thing? Sure, you can use Google. I mean, you can use that for a lot of different reasons. You can use Google, you could use a ghostwriter, you can use all sorts of different other mechanisms to get a book out there. If that's really what you want, that's not my flavor. I'm not going to tell you that that's wrong. Personally, I like the craft of writing because I feel like I also learn a tremendous amount when I write, but it also allows you to experience the world in a very different way. So for those of you who, again, please let me know, who you are and where you're from. In fact, let me go ahead and type that in there. Please let me know where you're at and what line of work you're in. Okay, it's very good. So we are broadcasting on all sorts of social medias. We got people on Facebook. We got people on LinkedIn. Man, a couple people on LinkedIn. That's surprising, especially for a Saturday, and also on YouTube. So very good, Patrick. Good to meet you. Thank you for coming in today from Columbus, Ohio. Fantastic. So, also, and if you have an idea for a business book, here's the thing that I'm going to be talking about is one of the things, especially if you guys are trying to do this and I know some of you had mentioned that, why are you doing this on a Saturday? Well, actually, the reason I did it on a Saturday is because I had an opening in my calendar, and many people view these on replay. So if you do have to hop off, totally fine. I totally get it. Just keep in mind, if you do have questions, please type them in along the way. Just please know that it might be several minutes later when I get to it. So don't just type in, what does that mean? Because there are lots of that's that I might have hit. So be really specific in your question, and I will be happy to come back to that in my answer. And also, just to let you know up front, I do have a book, I do have a course around all of this stuff, specific to actually self-publishing, including doing the Audible on your own. So if you have an idea for an Audible or an ebook, any of those things, all of that stuff we're going to talk a little bit of it today, but I just can't get into all the nuances just because we're really only going to be here for a little over an hour. So there is a course at the end if you are interested, and I'll even let you know when it is so you can hop off if you're not interested, but that's all good. All right, hello, Jennifer White, joining from Florida's Gulf Coast. Awesome. I love it there. Actually, in fact, I'm going to be hosting a mastermind in Clearwater in, when is that? June, in the middle of June. So June 18th, I'll be down there. I love it. I'm in real estate and coaching. And so Jennifer, for you to publish a book, that's exactly my background is in real estate. And I actually created the brand called Landlord Coach. I own not only the moniker, but the website, landlordcoach.com. And those were the premise of my first 3 books were in real estate. So really helped launch not just what I did in coaching. And I still get people who come to me for real estate stuff, But that's my background, and real estate is actually where I get most of my money from. So excellent. So if you're looking to write a book, you're in the right spot. I know exactly what you're trying to do, and I think that's brilliant. We've got Tiffany Wiegand, Waukesha, Wisconsin. Oh, I know where Waukesha is. You guys probably still have snow on the ground. No, it's I'm a Clifton Strengths coach for individuals, teams, and organizations. I love Clifton Strengths. In fact, I'm trying to think of my top 5 strengths that I literally just updated mine. I'm in a PhD program for organizational psychology, and we were just talking about Clifton Strengths. I think Clifton Strengths is phenomenal. It really is. My number 1 is learner, and my number 2 is strategic. Shocker, huh? So I love Clifton Strengths. I think that's phenomenal. And again, you writing around coaching, I think is phenomenal. Whether you talk about Clifton Strengths or not, I think it makes a lot of sense. Jennifer White says, awesome. I agree. I think that's awesome. I think that makes a lot of sense. And Tiffany says, no snow, but might tonight. You know what? Might tonight is probably 365 days out of the year up in Wisconsin. It is pretty country up there, though. It really is. I tease you guys. I tease the people from Minnesota mercilessly because I all the snow that you guys get. But anyway, let's see here. We've got welcome home, little one. Well, thank you. I'm not sure what you mean, but thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so let's get to it. Thank you for joining from YouTube, and we got quite a few people on today. This is interesting because it was a Saturday. I just figured, hey, I'll put something together, and didn't know who would show up. So let's get to it. Here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to multitask. I know it's like starting out with a reverse negative, but please don't multitask. I want this to be your CEO time. I want this to be something that you're going to specifically learn from, because I'm going to be putting a lot of information out there, and I don't want you to miss anything. So I know that there's a lot of distractions out there, but again, this is about training our brains and not being distracted. So please just try to stay plugged in the best that you can. But I know when you're thinking right now, like, who am I to write a book? Or I don't know how to write a book, or where do I even start? Or I'm afraid of criticism. I'm afraid of ridicule. I get it. And all of these different things, all these questions is all related to nothing but absolute head trash. So if you're here, I'm telling you, I don't care who you are, even if the topic that you want to write about has been written about all the time and in so many different ways, someone needs to hear it from you. Someone needs to hear it in your voice. So I just want you to say, take all that, gather it all up, and shove it into the trash can, because all of that is just head trash that you would say, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, think of how many books have been written about the Bible. And the Bible is thousands of years old, and yet there's more and more and more Christian authors putting out their take on it, their experiences. So I'm just saying, all of this stuff, even if you think like it's all been written about before, chances are no one's written about it, or no one's heard it from you. No one's heard it from your voice. My initial book, I'll talk about it here in a second, but my first book was called The Time Wealthy Investor. And The Time Wealthy Investor is about running rental properties very efficiently. Do you think how many people have written books about like that before? Yeah, but no one introduced it the way I did. I introduced this methodology known as the VIP method, Vision, Infrastructure, Process. When I wrote The Time Wealthy Advantage, which was my 5th book, that expanded from the VIP method to the Viper method, Vision, Infrastructure, Process, Execution, Reporting. So all of a sudden, now I've got these other things that are popping up because I really enjoy the writing, because it helps me learn, it helps me hone my message. So Patrick is saying, it is easy to fall in that trap of distraction. Oh my gosh, my brother. Yeah, preach it. Absolutely. I totally get it. Very little we know about the Bible. Yeah, I know. It's interesting. It's just, I'm a little cautious about reading. I mean, I'm a Christian. I'm careful about the types of authors that I read, but there's one he's absolutely hilarious. this guy, John Ortberg. He's written many books, but he's like, he's very authentic in his struggle. He's not like, or in his walk, he's not like, oh, you should do it this way. He just talks about how he always struggles with his own walk and trying to be a better person and everything. It's really funny. But again, my point is really that he's got his own perspectives, as do so many others in life and in approaches and whatever else it is. So I just want you to set aside all that different stuff. So let's get to the agenda. We're going to talk about the whys, we're going to talk about the wheres, and we're going to talk about the actual writing. This is not a writing clinic. I want to make sure you understand this. This isn't about, oh, when this happens and this. That's not what this is for. And honestly, that's probably more related to, I mean, there's certain ways that you can put together, certain genres. And I have a very, I have a unique style of writing, as everyone else does. I don't try to write my books to make them sound like anybody else. I write my books the way that I tend to teach. So I teach a lot using analogy. I teach a lot using story. And sometimes those stories are completely made up, but the lesson is it's like a parable, right? It's in a fable, right? You wrap in that lesson into that story. So this isn't necessarily a writing clinic, but as you write and as you develop your voice, you will learn how to do that. So I can't do any sort of justice to that, but there are certain things for you to start to think about in the early part of your writing, so you don't get hemmed up. All right, so the other thing is, there is the most important thing. I kind of alluded to it already, but we'll talk about that. There is a very most important thing that you need to start considering now if you're going to publish anytime between now and the next 2 or 3 years. So we'll talk about that. And then last, we'll talk about the publishing, some nuances to consider. And like I mentioned, I do have a book writing and publishing course, and I'll mention it at the end. If you're not interested, you can hop off. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I just want to make sure that you were aware of all of the different tools, because I just can't get to them all today. They're just too much. All right, so this is the pile of books that I have written so far. The book on the top left is The Time Wealthy Investor. That's my first book. That book is actually out of print now because I have since published other books, the Time Wealthy Investor 2.0, and all of the other books that are sitting there. That blue book, this is right here, that's the Time Wealthy Advantage. Now, there's all sorts of different books. Let me go back to this pile here real quick. So the Time Wealthy Investor is 280 pages. The Judge, which is kind of dead center, but up to the top middle, that's a 90-page book, and it's a story. That's all it is. It's a 90-page book, and it's a story. It's kind of based on the premise of, A Christmas Carol. The three ghosts that come and visit, right? It's kind of like that, but it's actually based around landlords. It's just a fun book to write. Then I updated the Time Wealthy Investor to the Time Wealthy Investor 2.0, and that's about a 280-page book as well. The Time Wealthy Advantage. So that was my fourth book, The Time Wealthy Advantage, and then of course I wrote these other guides. And these other guides, the strategic one sheets, the accounting guide, the sales guide, the lead generation guide, those were just 40 pages. So, and they were meant to be supplemental guides to the Time Wealthy Advantage. They kind of made it to the cutting room floor, but it was like really, really good stuff, but not quite enough for for a full other book. So I just made them into booklets, and those were all meant to be sold as one particular package. So this is what I'm saying, like, I've written all sorts of different types of different styles of writing, different purposes. Some are just, one-off, like the 40 pagers, and some are fully developed, very long books. The Time Wealthy Advantage is actually almost 300 pages. So what I'm saying here is that, like, don't get hung up in terms of exactly how it has to look. It doesn't have to be this big old, production. It can be a 90-page book that's simply a story that passes along a lesson or passes along your own story, whatever that is. So that's the book, The Time Wealthy Advantage. That was my fourth book. Sorry if I said fifth earlier, that was wrong. It was my fourth book, and I published that in May of last year. And again, these are all the different things, and we're going to talk about all the different things that I've done wrong so you can avoid all of those errors. So let's go talk about the whys. First, this is really important before you ever put any sort of pen to paper or fingers to keyboard. You have to start thinking about the different whys when it comes to actually writing. Now, I am going to go through the Viper framework really, really fast, and this is going to be very relevant to you if you're a business owner. And this is actually what I wrote about in the Time Wealthy Advantage. So the Viper framework is vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. And when you're creating a business, you're going to create the business with this structural framework, which is your vision, then creating this infrastructure that supports that vision, then the processes that runs on that infrastructure that all stays in alignment with your vision for the future. When it comes to execution and reporting, the execution and reporting is the stuff that you're actually going to do, and then the reporting is just going to measure the effectiveness of that action, those actions and activities, of those executions, right? So this is all one big framework that works within the 4 core functions of business, which are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. So this framework works in multiple different types of businesses. So I think Jennifer had talked about being in the real estate space, right? Was that you, Jennifer? I believe so. Yeah, exactly. So that framework, it works when I started niching up and away from the real estate space. The only reason why I did, there was just some things going on in 2019 in the real estate coaching space that I just kind of wanted to distance myself from. And I really liked working with business owners. That was part of my why. My why had shifted a little bit. And it was because, okay, after I taught people how to collect rents and put their systems in place, which the VIP method really is very systemic. It's very systems focused. Once I taught them that, I had so much more left to give, but they weren't really all that interested because they just wanted to, just make the money and let that system operate, even though they were starting to head down a path that I couldn't follow them on. They were no longer in alignment with my core values. So this is why, again, I just want you to think about this in terms of why are you doing this? Why do you want to write this? And that is really what directly relates to vision. So when you're looking at vision has 2 components. Vision has 2 components. It has personal vision and it has business vision. The personal vision is, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go in life? Like Patrick, what do you want your life to look like, Patrick? Tiffany, what do you want your life to look like? Jennifer, what do you want your life to look like if it wasn't defined by income generation? If your job description wasn't a life description? And this is important to start thinking about this now. And you're thinking, well, how in the world does this have anything to do with writing a book? It has everything to do with writing a book. It has everything to do with everything you do related to business. And maybe your book doesn't really have a whole heck of a lot to do with business. My original book, it really didn't have a whole lot to do with business until you almost got a third of the way in. And the reason for that is because it was written very much around my personal struggles that I had going on because of this business thing that I had created. I created this massive prison cell that I couldn't get out of. And I created the thing that was supposed to be giving me freedom was giving me the exact opposite. I mean, I was working 80, 90 hours a week and I couldn't stop. I was just shoveling coal into a freight train that was completely out of control. So when you're looking at personal vision, it's like, okay, well, where is it that you want to go? And take that time to start delineating what that why is. And it's, what do you want? What's your vision for your relationships with your family? What's the vision for your relationship with your spouse? What's your vision for your relationship with your children? What's your vision for your relationship with your faith, with your wellness, whatever? Make sense? So once that's defined, once that's written down, and it has to be written down, by the way. Come on, we're authors after all. Once that's written down, then you can take your business vision and say, cool, how are we going to get there? Right. Okay, great. That's your thing. Now let's reverse engineer this thing. And I'm telling you, writing and selling and publishing books, man, I am telling you that is a really great way to generate some real cool passive income. I sell a lot of books and not just and I don't do a heck of a lot of promotion. I mean, I come on here and I talk about my book a little bit, but I'm not like punching you in the mouth to sell books. But every time I get off of one of these sessions, I say, hey, if you want to buy the book and I can sign it and send you a copy, if you go to strategicboardroom.com, I'll send you one, right? And that's about all the promotion that I do. I really don't, not holding people's heads underwater until they say yes. Or I kind of mention it, and people who live outside the United States will buy it from Amazon. I always see a sales bump when these sorts of things happen. And I'm not saying it to like be promotive. I'm just mentioning it because people may need the tools that I have in their toolbox. Doesn't that make sense? Like it's not being promotive if it's something that they actually need. If I keep talking about, I don't know, like an ice maker that you need for your refrigerator, and you're like, dude, I already have an ice maker. I don't need that, right? Like even that's, you might think that's a very bizarre reference, but yeah, but the point is that I'm not going to try to sell you something and you don't need. That's like when you're just being that guy where you're just like, come on, dude, like get off it. I don't need the thing or whatever it is. But everybody has a little bit of tolerance for just saying, hey, I've got this thing. If you like it, go get it. Okay. And then move on. So here's the thing. The danger in creating a business vision before creating a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And I have sat in, I can't tell you how many masterminds or seminars, many of them in real estate. And I'm sitting next to these people and they're making like 6 and 7 figures a month net. Like that's what they're taking home. And I know their home life is a complete train wreck. And you know what they're more worried about? They're more worried about getting that extra comma in their bank account. So I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be overly preachy here. I'm just going to, we'll put the fries in the bag and we'll be done with the personal vision component. But I'm just telling you, please take a few minutes and get really clear in terms of what your personal vision is, and then reverse engineer that business vision for delivering that. So, and I think writing and publishing and selling books is a great way to do that. So when it comes to the 3 C's of business vision, now this is very critical, and it translates directly from your business into your books. So what I'm about to talk about is what makes up the DNA of your company, and it's going to translate directly from your company, from what you're doing, into what you're going to write. So anytime I get hired as a strategist, or what's known as a fractional CSO. A CSO is a fractional CSO. A fractional means I get hired like a consultant, and CSO is Chief Strategic Officer or Chief Strategy Officer. Either way, when I'm getting brought into an organization and I start looking at dysfunction that's going on, it's always because of one of these 3 things has a deficiency. Always. And that could be employee turnover, that could be difficulty in getting leads, difficulty in getting the right leads, turnover of customers, problems with profitability, all sorts of stuff, bad company culture. These are all things, and these 3 C's are going to delineate those 3 things. So when it comes to these 3 C's, you're going to want to spend a little bit of time defining these things if you're feeling like you're a little bit weak in some of them. And listen, everybody's a little weak in some of them, right? It's until you shine the light on it, you go, oh yeah, I guess I do need some work on this. So let's get to it. The 3 C's of business vision are core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Now, again, like I said, that also directly translates into the 3 C's of your book vision, which are, again, the core purpose, core values, and client avatar. So I'm just going to go through these rather quickly. I'm not going to spend a ton of time. Normally in other classes, I do a much deeper dive, but core purpose is specifically about what business that you're in and what problems do you specifically solve. So let me actually bring this back to business vision. I'm going to talk about a business vision first, and then I'll translate that into the book vision. So the business vision specifically, what business are you in and what problems do you specifically solve? If you're not very clear on what problems, what business that you're in, or I do everything, I do a little bit of this, like if someone just tells me that they're in real estate, that doesn't tell me very much. If someone tells me that they're a mechanic, that doesn't tell me very much. But if they tell me that they are a mechanic specifically for passenger rated vehicles and they only like to work on imports, okay, that tells me a little bit more. So this is where I'm starting to think it's very, very important when you start to think of the core purpose of the business, because the core purpose is going to be like, it's important that you know specifically what you do and be a little obnoxious about what you don't do. That's really important. If someone says, I'm a realtor, okay, great. Still doesn't tell me a whole lot. Tells me more than real estate, but still doesn't tell me a whole lot. Where are you a realtor? Well, I'm a realtor and I am on the south side of Tampa. Okay, great. That tells me something a little bit more. Now, I know enough about the Tampa market to know that you can literally have very different building prices from one side of the street to the other side of the street based on the street. And that's about all I know about Tampa. And I know enough about Tampa because I know a lot of investors in Tampa. And they're like, yeah, you got to be really careful because you might have an A property on one side and a C property on the other. And if you don't know the market well enough, you can really get burned. And that's something that's a bit unique to Tampa. So this is what's interesting. And of course, the market is going to work itself out on that. But the thing is, like, you have to know your core purpose. So if you just said, well, I'm in real estate, and there are people who come to me and say, sorry, I thought someone posted something. So I have people that come to me and there'll be like, they'll say, oh, I'm in real estate. I'm like, okay, cool. What do you do? Well, I'm a wholesaler. Great. Where are you a wholesaler? Well, I am a wholesaler in New York. And I'm thinking, okay, in the city of New York, you've got 5 boroughs. Okay, that's a lot. That's a big area. And then I said, well, do you have it, where do you have it narrowed down? They're like, well, I'm in New York, I'm in North Carolina, I'm in Texas, and in Arizona. I'm like, oh, you mean New York, the state? And you're in all these other states as well? Dude, you just defined to me like 10,000 different markets. How in the world do you think you're going to be an expert in all of those? It's impossible. There's no way you can be. So this is why I'm saying you have to be really clear on your core purpose. Let's get to core values. Core values, and the important thing about core values is that's what defines the company culture. And the company culture and the company brand are inextricably linked. Your core values are what kind of ooze out of you. You kind of get a sense of who I am already just by watching me for the last 30 minutes. You're like, okay, you probably have an idea of who I am, like just an opinion of what my personality is like. That's because I lead with my core values. My core values are defined and specific to who I am. And your core values are specific to who you are. There's probably people who are not aligned with my core values that already left. Totally fine. I'm not going to lose sleep over that. You know why? Because I'm not going to try to be everything to everybody. That is a great way to be frustrated. So what I'm saying is your core values define what your business is. And again, because our businesses are just an extension of us, what you bring to the business is your core values. So I'm saying, like, have you ever had, you might think, well, how do I define these? So Jennifer or Tiffany or Patrick or anyone else, if you'd like to comment, have you ever had a friend that wandered off the reservation? Have you ever had a friend that was heading down a path that you could not follow? That you were not willing to follow them? That's how you know a value of yours is a core value. So again, start to think of those violations of core values, that you have this miserable boss, or you have this friend that you lost. Maybe it was a romantic interest, whatever it was. That violation of the core value helps define that core value. And that means it's so important for you that you're willing to act. That's how you know a value is a core value. I have lots of values. I value peanut M&Ms, but I'm not going to go to war over peanut M&Ms. Someone breaks in and tries to hurt my family, they're going to be met with war. It's going to be a very bad day for them. So that's what I'm saying. Like, a value is a core value when you're willing to act. So that's what helps define that DNA of your business. The last is your client avatar. Who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? So when you're thinking about this, you're thinking about them in terms of geographics, demographics, and psychographics. Geographics is where they are. Demographics is who they are. Are they married? Are they single? Are they, are they wealthy? Are they poor? Are they educated? Are they not? Whatever. And then the psychographics is how they think and how they buy. Think of their attitudes. What's their attitude towards your industry? What is their lifestyle like? What are their interests? What do they like to follow? Do they like the Green Bay Packers or do they like the Chicago Bears? Do they like American football or European football? Do they like NASCAR or Formula One? Whatever. Know their interests. And then finally know their aspirations and goals. So when you can start to think about this is, if you know all these 3 things, you're really dialed in on your core purpose, you're very clear on your core values, and your client avatar is very specific. Do you think that you could write a book directed towards these people? I'm telling you could write a very good book if you knew these 3 things. So this is where I want you to think about this. Where might you need to be putting in a little bit of work? And I'm going to tell you, from 1 to 10, I'm going to have you rank yourself. You don't have to put it up in the chat if you don't want to. But from 1 to 10, where would you rank yourself in each of these 3 areas? Where would you rank yourself from core purpose? 1 to 10. 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. Where would you rank yourself in core values? 1 being lowest, 10 being the highest. And the same with client avatar. Where would you rank yourself? 1 to 10. 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. And I'm just telling you, I'm just going to tell you this. In my opinion, I don't think you could be more than a 5 if none of them are written down. If it's not written down, you can't be more than a 5. That's just my opinion. So that's where I would say get really clear on those 3 C's of business vision, and that will translate directly into your book. All right, so let's get to the where. The where's to consider. Where, oh, where? Where are you going to write? And I'm telling you, this is absolutely critical to think about this now. I don't know if any of you have actually started writing. If you have started writing already, that's great, but it's really important to think about where you're going to write, but also when. I want you to write when you have the best energy of your day. And try to place yourself away from distractions, because I'm telling you, it's amazing how much other stuff you're going to get done when you sit down to write. All of a sudden, you want to clean all sorts of things. You'll clean the bathtub. You'll clean the toilet. And you'll do also, and then, hey, maybe you'll go for a run, right? Maybe I'll go skipping down the road. Does anybody relate to these sorts of things? Yes, because this is the way sometimes our monkey brains happen, right? It's like you sit down, all of a sudden it's inside your head. You got this popcorn brain going off. And sometimes you have to recognize that you have to set the proper environment. When I go to write, I like being in a very, one of two extremes. I like being in a very quiet environment with music that'll play in the background that doesn't have any lyrics, or I like to be in an extremely busy place. It's almost overstimulating, which requires me to focus and hyper focus on what I've got going on. And so if I'm in a very busy place, like a very busy restaurant or a very busy bar or something along those lines, where I can actually just stay plugged in, put on some headphones and just plug and chug, that's really, really good. But again, it's very important that you consider about where you're going to write, because that will have a very direct impact on how much you're actually going to be able to do. All right. So think about that. Think about where you're going to write. And I just also want you to think about, for those of you, and again, I talked about staging the environment and about listening to music with no lyrics. And for those of you, my brothers and sisters who are ADHD prone, I'm telling you, like, I like very busy areas. I also like where I don't have any internet. So I will put my phone and put my phone on airplane mode. Will set a timer so I can work for 30 or 40 minutes. And then once that's done, again, 30 or 40 minutes, not 17 hours, okay, but 30 or 40 minutes. And then once that timer goes off, give myself permission to get up and just have white space. I'm not going to get up and scroll on my phone. I'm going to get up and set another timer for 10 or 15 minutes so I can just stare out the window and give myself some white space, give myself something other to think about than just trying to plow through this book. Because again, you'll be the drunk guy at the party. You're not going to be as funny as you think you are when you've been drinking since Wednesday and it's Friday evening, right? That's why I'm saying you want to make sure you're giving yourself some time, because you can't sprint. You're not going to sprint 26 miles in a marathon. It's just not possible. And this is what a lot of people do. So give yourself that white space in your calendar so you can give yourself a little bit of a break. So something else I want you to consider, we talked about where you're going to write, but also where are you going to save these things? And then you're thinking like, man, that's really super granular. Why are you bringing that up? Because I'm telling you, this will drive you absolutely nuts. Save and backup in all sorts of different spots. I don't have them actually in my desk anymore, but I had like, oh yeah, they're in the other room. But I had like 3 different thumb drives, and I would like put them in different places. But the problem is you wind up with conflicted copies. So some of you, if you're writing this on Google Docs, I respect that. I'm not a Google Doc sort of person, but I do want to maintain and keep copies of my book in different locations. So maybe you have it saved, maybe you have it saved on a thumb drive, maybe you have it saved on your hard drive, but I also want you to have it saved on Carbonite and some other place, and also do it every single time. So in other words, you're working off of your computer, but how are you going to manage conflicted copies? The way that I do it is I would always, I would always date it to the last date that I just worked. And sometimes I would even put the time on there in military time. That way I could always just keep track of when I was actually saving the last copy. Every now and again, you will get a conflicted copy and you're like, crap, where did I come from? What happened? And what happens if your laptop gets stolen or you have a fire, God forbid, or something along those lines? You want to make sure that all of your work is in different locations. So that's why I just recommend make sure you start thinking about that now in terms of where you're going to save things. Okay. And the other thing is I want you to start thinking about where you're going to capture your ideas. I'm telling you this, how many of you out there have like the most amazing ideas when you have nothing at all around you to write it down with? When you're standing in the shower, when you're walking on the treadmill, when you're riding on a lawnmower, when you're driving down the interstate at 75 miles an hour, right? You have all sorts of ideas and it's never convenient. So you're like, oh, I try to keep it on my phone. Great. I understand. But are you categorizing these things or are they just literally random musings that you're never going to actually be able to find later on? So I have a way of doing it. I do keep notes on my phone. Not I sometimes I'll narrate into them, but I will use that and then I will transfer that over to my master copy on my desktop, and then from my desk, which is my laptop, but my desktop, and then that becomes part of everything else I want to write about. So I just want to make sure if you do have different ideas, I want you to think about how you're going to capture these ideas, especially when you start writing, because the ideas, when they come, they are never convenient. That's just the way it is, especially when you're in your alpha state. Your alpha state is where the ideas come from. That is from your subconscious mind. And that's when you're like washing dishes. It's when you're just chugging along. You're kind of drift from your beta state into your alpha state. And that's where your ideas come from. Right. So let's think about that. So those are all the where considerations. Now I want you to let's talk about the writing itself. So when you actually start putting pen to paper, I want you to think in advance, deciding a pace and a rhythm in advance. I want you to start thinking too about the length of the chapters, and you'll start to get a sense of how long the book will be and how often will you write. And are you looking to do this where you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to try to get this banged out. I want to get this done in the next month. Okay, I respect that. I've done that. Or do you just want to write and just to get something out? This is where I would just recommend for you, if you're not feeling inspired, just start writing. Sometimes, especially with people who get like writer's block, sometimes it's just writing about anything. It could just be like writing a letter. So just moving through that will definitely help you out. But the other thing is I want you to think about, so again, decide that pace and rhythm in advance, but also decide the point in advance. Because I can't tell you how many times someone has written something and they're like there's a friend of mine who is interested in writing. I'm not really even sure what style. She's an absolutely amazing writer. But I stopped and I said, okay, so what's the point of this? I mean, it's beautiful what she writes. And there was some trauma in her background that she's trying to, I think for her writing is very cathartic, but she does want to write a book. And I was like, okay, but what's this journey that you're taking this reader on? Where are you trying to go? And and that's okay that there's no point in it now, but don't expect your readers to be loyal to you if you just keep wandering them down these black holes and they don't know what to do to reconcile. They need that closure, right? That's that Objekina effect. We have to have that closure on the other side. The Objekina effect is what was her name? Marina Objekina, who is she was a Russian psychologist, and she noted that the waiters and waitresses would take the orders of a large party, and then as soon as they delivered the food, they would just mentally dump it. They would mentally erase it. So they came back and said, "Hey, can you tell everybody? Can you tell me, after they had eaten the meals were all delivered, there was like 15 of them. They said everybody covered their plate with a napkin, brought the waiter back over and say, hey, can you tell each of us what we ordered? And the waiter was like, I have no idea. I didn't write any of it down, but I have no idea, right? Because he dumped it. but they always got the order correct. So that's the option key effect. People need that. Once that circle's been closed, then they can move on. So I'm saying, like, don't run people down without actually making sure, don't bring them down this hole unless they actually have that closure. That's really, really important as a writer. So deciding your point in advance, and also decide on the language. I know that there are some people, they don't really care if well, I mean, how do I want to say this? Like you can have a formal style of writing or an informal style of writing. Mine tends to be a little bit more on the casual side and versus formal. Like, I'm not writing even though it's a business book, I'm not writing a manual. But are you going to decide in advance, are you going to swear or are you going to be more polite? And that is important, because there are some books out there that kind of cross that line. I don't generally swear from stage. I generally don't swear when I'm publicly speaking. Every now and again, if I do, I will like say it in advance. I'm about to say a really bad word, right? But I don't do that because I'm a prude or anything. I'm trust and know, I'm a Marine at the end of the day. I know how to swear. But I don't generally do that because I don't want to infect my audience. I don't want them to lose the lesson of what I'm saying because I'm using some sort of caustic language, right? So I want you to carefully consider your use of language in a book. Again, if you choose to swear or not, I have no judgment. There are people who are brilliant authors that use both types of language. Are you going to use technical language, or are you using more of a story format? Are you using, what type of phonetics are you using? Like a Southern drawl and a British accent? Are you going to write out the words the way that they're saying it, like a 3-year-old would speak? Or are you writing it in, more specific prose? So I just want you to understand, like, how are you going to determine this? And I want you to think about that in advance. I also want you to decide on an accountability partner early, because and it should not be someone you're married to. Okay. That is not their role. So my suggestion is find someone else, maybe like a writing coach, maybe someone else who's really wants to do that sort of thing. And I'm telling you, there's nothing like having an accountability partner that you pay. And you're like, okay, hey, I'm holding you accountable and you're paying me regardless if you do this book or not. And you told me you wanted to have this book done in the next 120 days. And you not writing is more about you than it is about me. So one other quick thing, I'm just going to make this, I mentioned it earlier, but about using AI. Look, AI can be a good tool, but I just don't like to use AI as a crutch. So for me, as a content creator, I like to use my writing to flesh out my ideas, and I can't really do that if I'm using and leaning on AI. So again, you do what you think is best and is right, what is right for you. But I'm just saying, where does AI come up with all these ideas? It's scanning the internet. So yeah, we humans are always going to be ahead of AI, even though AI is like, oh, but AI is the wave of the future. I get it. But I'm telling you, like, the creativity and all the things and the discernment that's come from the human mind, I don't think AI is going to ever be able to replicate that. Just my thought. So when it gets to the actual writing, I mean, I'm just going to let you know, 99.4% of people will not finish a book that they start writing, according to a statistic that I made up. So I don't know what the percentage of people that will not finish the book that they start writing, but it is a lot. I mean, it's a lot. It's probably more like 99.999% of people that start a book don't finish. Listen, don't be that 0.6%. Get the thing done. And even if it's just a little bit, again, that journey of 10,000 miles starts by just keeping one foot going after the other. And it's kind of like climbing a mountain. Don't stare at the peak. Don't stare at the summit. Stare at your boots. Just one step at a time. And that's what I want you to pay attention to. I want you to pay attention to that 30 to 50 to 100 words a day. Or, hey, I'm going to do 1 hour's worth of writing per day, or whatever you can do. That's what I want to make sure that you're doing, and keeping up that pace and deciding that pace in advance. That's the best way to actually make sure that it gets done. All right. So I want you to also stay organized as best as you're able. Stay organized in your thoughts. You can use old school index cards. I like using index cards because I'm more of a kinesthetic type. I actually like the physical writing. So I would say, use index cards. You can use use mind mapping software. I was going to show you what that looks like, but honestly, you can look it up. It's pretty easy. But one of the ones that I like is MindMup. MindMup. It's very cheap. It's like $20 a year. And what it basically does is it creates like a central node, and then it starts to create all these child nodes off of that based on different ideas that you may have. I've created courses off of mind mapping software. I've created book chapters, different ideas that I'm trying to flesh out. It's very, very good, and it helps keep your ideas organized. And if you're like, well, that idea actually would be better over here, you can actually drag and drop, just like taking an index card and, it might be over here, you're going to move it over here, right? It's the same type of thing. It's just on digital. So those are different ways. MindMup or MindMeister are really good for that. But the other thing I want you to keep track of is future pacing and callbacks. Future pacing and callbacks. That is something that's known. We see it all the time in the movie industry, like when someone is thinking about something that might happen in the future, and then it brings it back to the present time. Or when they're thinking about something that happened in the past, they use more of a sepia tone, and then they're like, oh yeah, that's the way I was when I was a little boy, right? So you can use future pacing and callbacks. So future pacing is something along the lines, and you've heard me do it already a few times, where it's like, hey, in chapter such and such, like, hey, as discussed in chapter X, right? Hey, we're talking about leadership, but hey, we're not going to unpack that right now. We'll talk more about leadership in chapter 12. Okay, and you're in chapter 6. So generally for something like this, it's very tough to stay organized in your thoughts, but I'm telling you, that really elevates your writing. It's not just, you're not just stringing together like, you're writing like a fifth grader. You're actually letting them know what they can expect down the road. And that actually helps people stay engaged. Because like, oh, that's really good, right? It's like coming up next, right? And yet that keeps you through the commercial when you're watching your favorite television show. So this is the sort of thing when you're doing that. So what I generally do when I'm staying organized in this, and this is how I do it. If I know at some point, and again, I'm writing it, right? And I don't know what chapter this thing's going to be in. I mean, I've written so many chapters that they must have had like an identity crisis by the time I finally wrote the book, that chapter may have been chapter 2, then it was chapter 10, then it was chapter 8, and then it was chapter 19 by the time I actually published it. So what I will do is I will say, as discussed in chapter X, and then I will use my highlighting tool and I will highlight that. That way it's a visual cue for me to go, I need to make sure I know where I talked about that. That's a really good way for me to stay and pay attention to where my future pacing is and where my callbacks are. So let's say for argument's sake that I was writing something in chapter 11 and I discussed about something in chapter 3, and I'm still going to put it as discussed in chapter X, or hey, back in the chapter where I talked about X, Y, or Z, I want to make sure that I highlight that and make sure I actually talked about X, Y, or Z. Like even if you don't use it as discussed in chapter X, or hey, we're going to be talking about this. If I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to be talking about this coming up, I'm still going to highlight that because I want to make sure that I actually do and deliver my promise that I do talk about that at some point in the future. Nothing's more frustrating to a reader that gets lied to. They're like, hey man, I thought they were going to talk about marketing. They never brought it back up again. Make sense? So this is a way, so I use the highlighting tool. So then when I go back to the final edit, I'm reading through it and I'm like, oh, here's the highlight. Where did I talk about marketing? So then I can go in, I can, put in my search tool, marketing, and then I get to see all the different places, and I can actually find where I talked about it. Or maybe I missed it. Maybe I actually didn't, maybe in my head I thought I wrote it, but I didn't. So this is a great way to stay organized. Just food for thought. So talking about staying organized, future pacing, the citations in resources, these are sorts of things that I would recommend. Listen, I mentioned, I'm in a PhD program for organizational psychology. And right now I am learning citations and references for APA 7 format. Listen, I am not the citation police. do whatever types of citations that you want to do, but I will tell you, please make sure you're giving, if you give a thought from someone else, if you get an idea from other authors, please just mention it. And I'm telling you, like, not every idea that's out there is the most original. I get a lot of ideas from other authors, but I always give them credit. I don't even know how many references I made to different authors in my books. It was a lot in my first book. In my fourth book, it was probably, I gave a lot of references and mentioned a lot of different books. And that's because I want people to be enriched. I want them to go like, hey, if you want to go deeper on this is a fantastic book. And this is what I took away from it. I really learned a lot. So don't be that guy or that gal where you're like thinking that every idea that you have out there has to be unique. Man, I'm telling you, like, I read a lot of research papers right now, and I would say, venture to guess, probably 90 to 95% of the material in there is all from other people's research, and this person who's writing this paper is just adding 5% more. And that's it. That's totally fine. Don't plagiarize. And it actually, like I said, it does enrich your writing. It does make your book for a more robust read to the reader. Okay. So using writer's notes are something that I do. So a writer's note would be like you're typing, and in the middle of the typing is like, what's a good example? Oh, okay. So when I wrote this book, when I wrote The Time Wealth, The Advantage, there was a story arc that started with a fictional couple. Okay. So when I started writing about this fictional couple, I put in the very beginning where I wanted the story arc to go. And I wrote about that in the very beginning, and I just kind of put it in like big block letters, and then I highlighted it because the writer's note is really meant to be deleted at the final edit. So you just kind of look at it and you go, okay, so I want to make sure that this couple does this thing by this time, and I want to make sure that I make this point at the very end. Okay. And by the end of the book, did I make that point? Did I land the plane? Did I make this point? So you can use writer's notes. It's really just a block that you put in the middle. You can use it as a comment. You can do it any sort of way you want, but make sure you're using your writer's notes. And then look at different writing styles, writing as an actual craft. This is something that this is where I really saw the benefit in something known as requisite variety. And requisite variety is when you have lots of different backgrounds and different things, where it's actually known as Ashby's law of requisite variety, where the system that has a problem, in order to solve this problem, the system that gets sent to solve the problem must be more complex than the problem itself, which really does make sense. So I will tell you that my writing really took on a whole different form when I really started working on my writing as an actual craft and reading all sorts of different genres, reading poetry. And even though I write business books, I get a lot from reading poetry and reading novels and reading other things around that. There's 3 books that I really like. I've read 2 of the 3. I read Anne Lamott, Bird by Bird. She is hilarious. And she really talks about publishing directly, but which is fine. But she talks a lot about different writing. Stephen King on writing. Now, Stephen King, as you know, he writes a lot of horror stuff, but he writes about his writing, which was absolutely hilarious. But he also gives a lot of different really good tips. Both of these I went through Audible on. I'm generally not an Audible type person, but these were actually quite consumable on Audible. The last one is called On Writing Well by William Zinsser. I have not read this, but the person who actually edited my first book was phenomenal. She's a very good friend. She says, nope, you need to read this book. I said, okay, great. So I threw it up there, but just letting you know, I have not been through that yet. So if you hate it, you can blame my friend. Okay. So the other thing that in terms of writing, learn how to use and include story. Now, I like a story format of like title, triggering event, and then transformation. But it's really important that however you choose to use story, like the title is, I was a little boy, or I was a little girl, or I was growing up poor, or I grew up, in a Midwestern town, or whatever. That's the title. Then the triggering event. And when I was growing up and this happened, then all of a sudden one day, boom, right? What's that triggering event? And of course, there's that triggering event, and then there's this there's the battle and everything else that goes on, but then at the very end is the transformation. So that triggering event really triggers this whole other thing, but then there must be a transformation. There must be a, not necessarily happily ever after, but there must be a component to where you've landed the plane. You put the fries in the bag. There, where basically they can say, it didn't turn out as I hoped, but at least there is an ending. There's been many times I have seen authors that will talk about, it's like, one time we walked in and they found their child unresponsive and not breathing. And then they never say what happens to the child. Like, is the kid okay? And I have to stop what I'm doing and like try to find it on Google. Like, I gotta know. And so I just want you to keep in mind that transformational event on the back end, like, hey, just letting you know, she's fine, but this is actually what happened, right? So like you keep in mind that people need to have that closure when you're walking them through your story. And stories are very powerful when you're doing that. So again, the other thing about this in terms of writing is making sure that you're reading outside your genre, like I had mentioned earlier. All right, so that's the writing component. Let's talk about the most important thing. What is that most important thing, you ask? I am glad you asked. I would be happy to tell you. It's promotion. Because I'm telling you right now, if everyone's like, oh, wow, you've written 8 books. Yeah, that might sound impressive, but selling the books it's significantly more difficult than actually writing the book. So I have already started promoting my next book called Leader Boss. You know why? Because if I wait until that book hits my hot little hands and is printed to start promotion, I'm not going to have the traction that I want. It's like getting the momentum going when I could have had the momentum going for 6 or 8 months prior. And even I would even say that is probably too short. You need to start promoting it early. So I started, again, I've been writing my next book called Leader Boss, which addresses the struggles that bosses have with either being too nice, where they get walked all over, or they get too dictatorial and they become tyrants. Right? So this is where it's important for you to lead with value. And it's never shameless if you lead with value to the crowd that is interested in what you have to say. So this is the thing that you have to start thinking about. So I could literally spend an entire hour and a half on just promotion, but I'm just putting this out there now. You need to be like a little shameless about promoting your book and letting people know, hey, I'm writing a book. And one of the things you can do is get snippets released prior, and you can, get it in front of book buyers that are gathered in Facebook groups or whatever. There's lots of different ways to do it, but I'm just letting you know, please start considering promotion as early as you possibly can. So let's talk about the publishing piece. And this is the last piece, and then we'll wrap up. So thanks for sticking around. So the when it comes to the publishing piece, you can work with an agent, which I have never worked with an agent, but I'm very strongly considering working my next. In fact, I was really strongly thinking about doing that with the Time Wealthy Advantage, but I also had a very different reason for not doing that. So I have a pretty significant following, so it's easy for me to, when I put a book out there, they're gonna be like, oh, cool, you have a next book. And my books are good. They're not all like promoting other things that I'm trying to sell. Like I hate when authors do that. They like spend the entire time selling their product or service. Man, it's just like, dude, you're being that drunk guy at the party. Please don't do that. So when you're working with an agent, they're generally not going to let you do that. So you can either, when you're looking to actually publish the book, you can work with an agent, you can self-publish, or you can do the hybrid model. So I'm not super familiar with the hybrid model, but it's just kind of like halfway in between the self-publish. Like you can still work with an agent, but you can still get author copies. I'm not 100% sure exactly how it works. I think it just depends. But here's the truth when it comes to working with an agent. Whatever you don't pay for in dollars is what you give up in control. Just keep that in mind. So part of the reason why I did not want to work with an agent when it came to the Viper framework was because I didn't want to give up that intellectual property. So just keep in mind that, I wanted to be able to write and talk and speak freely about the Viper framework without worrying about, stepping on someone else's toes. So that is, I just want you to think about that. But the nice thing about having an agent is you need to start to consider things like book cover design, the title and the subtitle. And these are sorts of things that you'll also that an agent will help you with through the editor and everything else. If you're doing it yourself, you're going to have to find these people to help you with the book cover design. And please don't design your own book cover. I'm just telling you, that's horrible. Unless you truly got a design background. And even some people who do have a design background, if they've never designed a book before, it was like, there was someone who had designed a book cover for me just as a thought. And I was like, oh my gosh, that looks like an STD pamphlet. I was like, that is terrible. Like, it looked like herpes, you're a silent killer. Like, it was terrible. It was so bad because just the way that it came out. There was no way that I and they had a design background. They had a graphic design background, but someone specifically who's done a lot of books and has that ability to visually capture someone's attention in that hot second. Because let's face it, people do judge books by their covers. Okay. So when it comes to the title and the subtitle, the title of the book is like, that's the hook. That's the hook. And the subtitle is the promise. That's what you're promising for the book. Okay, so I'll explain what I mean by that. So the title is the time wealthy advantage. Oh, huh. So people can, what, time wealthy? What does that mean? Okay, be wealthy in time and have an advantage? Like, it's a hook. It's meant to stop them in their tracks. If you write something that's like, and it might be, let's say you write a book and the cover of it says black coffee. Is it a book about coffee? I don't know. No. It's a book about business, but it's all about the understandings, like why I have to lean on drinking so much coffee every day because I'm so overworked and so worn out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is terrible title, right? But I get it. If you're a well-defined and well-established author, fine, you can get away with doing that. You gotta be a little careful because you gotta recognize that this title really is a hook. It's just like a marketing hook. So when you're writing the subtitle is about the brand promise. So I'll give you an example. And this is, by the way, is all stuff you're going to test. Right? You test this with your audience. I tested I didn't test the time wealthy advantage because I knew that was going to be the title, but I did test the subtitle, or the subheading. So I tested, my first one was a business owner's 5-step strategic blueprint to freedom. That's a lot to say, by the way. Then I tested a business owner's strategic blueprint to freedom. Okay. Then I tested a strategic approach to building the life and business you want. And that is actually what tested out. So again, I originally started, I think it was the business owner's 5-step strategic blueprint to freedom. That's the one I thought people were going to like. So this is what I did. I copied and I said, I have about 5,000 or so friends on Facebook, lots of friends on Facebook, but I knew the ones who would be most likely to actually buy this book. So I said, hey, can I ask you your opinion? They're like, sure. I was like, great. I was like, hey, I'm putting this book together and it's the time wealthy advantage. That's the title. Which subheading do you like best? Do you like A, a strategic owner's 5-step strategic blueprint to freedom? Or do you like B, a business owner's strategic blueprint to freedom? They're like, I like B. Okay, great. Do you like B, which is a business owner's strategic blueprint to freedom? Or do you like C, a strategic approach to building the life and business you want? They're like, I really I like C. Okay. And that's exactly what I did. I created like a winner's bracket. So anytime one of them won, and I had like 4 different, so I would do like 3 different tests. If you can do too many, I would do A or B, great, you like B. Do you like B or C? Great, you like C. Do you like C or D? They're like, I like C still. Okay, great. So that would be about the furthest I would go. Okay, there's about 3 tests. So once you kind of figure out what the winner is, and then I start asking multiple people, and I must have asked probably close to 100 people, and it became very clear that like by a very large margin, everybody liked a strategic approach to building the life and business you want. So that is the subtitle on this book, The Time Wealthy Advantage, a strategic approach to building the life and business you want. So that is exactly how I did it. I tested it because guess what? Your opinion does not matter. Just like my opinion did not matter. And when I published the actual book, I mean, there was a couple of book design, and I did the same thing with book cover designs. I took, do you like A or you like B? And they're like, I really like A. Great. Do you like B or do you like C? I'm like, great. I liked C, and no one liked C. C was like 30%. I was like, oh my gosh, no one liked it. I liked it. In fact, I still want to use it for something. But my opinion does not matter, and neither does yours. What matters is what other people who would potentially be buyers. And guess what they'll do when you test this? They'll go, hey, what's this for? I'm like, oh, I'm writing a book. Oh, tell me when it's getting ready to publish, right? Remember promotion? This is a great way to do that too. All right, so let's get to publishing. The actual publishing you can get through Amazon or KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing. And you can get an ISBN from what is known as Bowker. You can get Amazon to assign an international standardized book number, or Amazon can assign one, but you give up some rights by doing that. Or you can buy one from Bowker if you are looking to have your own. It does give you a little bit more rights. When you're publishing on Audible, one of the things I just want you to remember is if you really had no intention of putting out an ebook, if you're planning on narrating it and putting it on Audible, you have to have an ebook, which I did not know that at all. So one of the things I talk about, and when you're narrating in Audible, that's something I go very deep in in the course. So if you want to learn all about how to narrate that, I'll talk about that here in just a second if you're interested. But that is, there's a lot to it, but you can do it. It's not hard to do, but it is a lot. There's a lot of intricate little steps, and I can show you how to do that. So it's not intuitive at all. I actually made a lot of mistakes, so I'm happy to share those with you. One thing I just want you to understand, the nice thing about self-publishing is that you can do revisions. I actually had an error on my original book cover, and I could not believe that I misspelled a word. I am that guy when it comes to like spelling it. And it wasn't even a misspelled word. It was actually a word that didn't belong in the spot in the sentence. Anyway, all of those have been worked through, but I made the revision. The cool thing was I made the revision. The sucky thing is sometimes they pre-print like 100 copies. So you have to get through all those copies first before you actually get to the fixed copy. Okay, so just understand revisions are not always right away. And you also have to understand the limitations of an editor. So if you, again, like I talked about with that story arc of like you have your hero in the story and you're going through the story arc, if there's any flaws in the story, they're not going to catch that necessarily. They might, but keep in mind, they're looking for spelling errors. They're looking for flow. They're looking for sentence structure. They're looking for commas and quotation marks. They may not even remember the actual story because that's not necessarily what they're looking for. A lot of editors, they're not going to read the book like 4 times. They're like, well, let me put on my critical thinking hat now. Let me put on my grammar hat now. Let me put on my English literature hat now. Like, they're not going to do that. So you have to understand the limitations of editors, and that's why you would also use something known as a beta reader. A beta reader is when someone who's like in your circle will read the book for you, and they just kind of give you their general impression. All right. So that is everything. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. I will be happy to answer any questions for you. If you would like to hop off and you're sick of my voice and my face, I totally get that. But keep in mind, all kidding aside, if you do have to go, you are more than welcome to put you're more than welcome to hop off, and you'll get the replay sent automatically to you. So if you got questions, go ahead and type those in the chat. This is the end of any of the training. Everything I'm gonna go through right now is actually related to the Business Owners Writing and Publishing Advanced course. So everything that's in this course is everything I talked about in this session. However, it goes significantly more granular on actually how to do some of this stuff, like in lesson 8. So lesson 1 through 7 is kind of a recap, and it goes a little bit more granular in terms of this actual session. It goes a little bit deeper. But in lesson 8, it actually gets into the advanced promotion, about getting more granular and actually getting clear on who it is that you're trying to target. That is getting really specific in your client avatar. And in lesson 9, there's more advanced promotional tactics. that you can use when you're getting really granular with your ideas, and different ways that you can actually market and get that book in front of people's eyeballs and earballs. That's just the important that there's just so much when it comes to promotion, and realistically there's just different ideas that can cook up, and not knowing your specific genre, that might be a little bit difficult to give you specifics, but this does give you more promotional ideas. If you are looking at social media promotion, again, we talked about hooks, which is like the book cover hook. You got to have hooks, you got to have copy, you got to have offers and promotion that is good for the Meta platform. I think books being promoted on the Meta platform, whether Instagram or Facebook, I think that's a phenomenal way to sell books. In fact, I sold quite a few books in the early months, and I'm actually getting ready to do another round of promotion with the Time Wealthy Advantage. So there's a lot of really cool ways, and social and Meta's making it really easy to help target people, especially the way they're using AI to build an audience for you. There's different delivery ideas, and rather than just like dropping a phone in a bag mailer, actual different ideas, so you can enhance that person's experience when they get your book. So again, for those of you who have like coaching programs or anything like that, if you're looking to really build that audience and really have that wow factor, I mean, I used to literally take a plastic bag, one of those bag mailers, drop my phone in there, I would sign the book, drop it in the mailer, tape it up, send it. Really with not much consideration. There was really not much love in that process. I have since moved on to what's known as the black box. And the black box, man, I'm telling you, people are like, man, what, you spent some money on this. I'm like, yeah, I did, because I want that experience for that buyer. When people are buying the black box, they're getting, it's literally a black box with all the books in it. It's form fitting. They fit neatly in there. I mean, it's a pretty cool experience when they get that. So just delivery options and delivery ideas, because again, it's about the user experience. Also getting your own ISBN, which is your International Standard Book Number. That is something that every book has to have. And this is important for you to start to consider when you are, so, you know, that little code in the back, that's that little grid code, but you don't actually have to have that on there. I don't know. I think that's helps with retailers, but you know, you can create that on your own if you like, or you can plug in that ISBN and Amazon will make that for you. Or you can give up the rights and not allow Amazon to sell that book anywhere else other than Amazon, and you can allow Amazon to do that for you. So it's up to you. But I'll show you how to do that on your own. I don't think there's any reason not to have your own ISBN personally, except it's it's a total racket, but I mean, it's not prohibitively expensive. Publishing on KDP. So this is the Kindle Direct Publishing platform, and there are 3 main pages on KDP, and your whole world will revolve around those three different internet pages. And it just walks you through, but each page is a lot, and especially page 2 is a lot. So you really got to know what you're walking into in advance. This is the longest video out of the whole series. I think it's almost 40 minutes, but this one, there's a lot on this one. So that one is one I would suggest. That's kind of worth the price of admission. The ebook formatting, this is also so you can format your book for Kindle. And I would really suggest you doing this for ebook, and you have no choice if you're actually going to create an Audible, like I said, because Audible uses the chapters that you set up in your ebook. So you have to know that up front. So once you upload your ebook to KDP, that's when you're going to start narrating, or you can actually start narrating, but that's what you need to do in advance of having your Audible published. So if you are going to narrate your book, this is all the stuff that you need to know before you narrate. And once you actually start narrating, and I used Adobe Audition, and I literally walk you through every aspect of Adobe Audition on how to do all that stuff. So if you're interested in this, it's 34 minutes long. It is a lot of editing and sound engineering, but it's really not complicated once I show you how to do it. It's just, if you don't know what you're looking for, I mean, it took me a while to figure it all out. It was very aggravating, but I did figure it out. By the end, the book sounded amazing. But I'm just letting you know, you can do a lot, or you can find someone else to do it. But I'm just saying, sound engineers get paid a lot of money because they're worth what they're doing. So anyway, if you then finally uploading everything you have to ACX, which is the Amazon, I don't know what ACX stands for, but it's Amazon something, blah, blah, blah. But it's basically the the Audible version of KDP. So basically that's where you upload it to, and it takes like 2 weeks for them to approve it. So actually having your Audible launch on the exact same day as the book launch is actually impossible. So I don't know how they actually do it. All of this stuff, by the way, is $39. And I will tell you, you get a 395-day, 100% money back guarantee. And the reason why you say, well, that's an oddball thing. Yeah. So it's not 395 days because I want to give you like a month to go through the course. I mean, you can take as long as you want to go through it. But I want to give you like at least 30 days to go through it and then a full year to implement this stuff. And if you don't like it, you can actually get your money back. I will go ahead and put this up there in the link if you want to purchase this. And this is, let's see here. Let me get this copied. Okay, so I'll put that link in the chat. And if you are interested. So that is all I have, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Let me get this here. Close here. Oh my goodness. Why are you giving me grief? Okay. So there it is there. Okay, perfect. So there it is in the chat session. So if you guys are interested, you guys can go ahead and purchase that. And like I said, it's $39 if you are, for whatever reason, if you're not satisfied with this. Like I said, I give a full 395-day guarantee, 100% of your money back, and that's it. So if I don't see any other questions in there, so if you guys don't have any other questions, all right, I don't see any other questions. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so very much for sticking around today. I really appreciate you meeting with me today on Saturday, and I will see you guys in the boardroom. Take good care.